President Donald Trump has finally condemned his supporters' actions at the Capitol last week. A mob stormed the building, resulting in 4 people dying.
Well, about 70 protesters have been charged with crimes. Trump was lambasted for inciting his supporters and for failing to speak out against them.
But in a video released by the White House, he's now done an about-turn.
I unequivocally condemn the violence that we saw last week. Violence and vandalism have absolutely no place in our country and no place in our movement. Making America great again has always been about defending the rule of law, supporting the men and women of law enforcement, and upholding our nation's most sacred traditions and values. Mob violence goes against everything I believe in and everything our movement stands for. No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence. No true supporter of mine could ever disrespect law enforcement or our great American flag. No true supporter of mine could ever threaten or harass their fellow Americans.
Well, we've managed to get Mark Rosenberg back. Mark, sorry, we had an imprint above your face. Tell us what's going to happen now. So, second impeachment for this U.S. president. How's it going to play out? I mean, how realistic is this?
Well, first things first is that there will not be a trial while Trump is still in office. So the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, has made that clear that he will not be calling the Senate back in order to hold an impeachment trial. So the judgment on the charges of impeachment will occur once Joe Biden has become president of the United States after the 20th of January. From there, then there will be a trial in the Senate, which at that point will be controlled by the Democratic Party, the same party as Joe Biden, which will change the tenor, certainly, of the proceedings from the previous impeachment trial in the Senate earlier this year, when the Senate was controlled by the Republicans, which is President Trump's party.
The fact that he'll no longer be president, will that work in his favor or against him?
Hard to say. The legality is contested in terms of whether a former president can be impeached. Clearly, the political process will move in that direction. However, I'm sure his lawyers will argue that the proceedings themselves are not viable. At the same time, it's clear that there's been significant defections in the Republicans already from their kind of lockstep defense of Trump during the last impeachment. And so he's definitely on weaker footing this time around.
And they want charges of high crimes and misdemeanors. But I guess ultimately they don't want him to run again, do they?
Right. So the sanction that they're looking to enforce is to prevent Trump from running again for president, but also impeachment and a conviction on impeachment would remove certain benefits from Trump as a former president. Again, these are, because it's an unprecedented situation, it's not totally clear what he would be stripped of, but security protections and other kind of honorifics associated with being a former president, he would not be subject to being convicted of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Look, there have been many people, many organizations trying to get Trump for a long time, particularly during his presidency. But the reality is now he's been linked to something, well, unprecedented in the last 100 years or so, the storming of Capitol Hill. You know, we've got deep divisions in the U.S. now, exacerbated possibly by what happened. What does the Joe Biden administration have to do now to ease tensions?
Well, it's a tall order, to be sure. I think the Biden administration has to try to formulate a national identity in the United States which cuts across these very deep divisions. And that will be a real challenge, as I'm sure most of your audience knows, having experienced with in South Africa. It's very difficult to formulate a national identity on top of some pretty significant ethnic and socioeconomic and political differences. I think Biden will have a good shot at doing so just based on his reputation and his history as a moderate and as a conciliatory figure. But I don't think these kinds of tensions or the threat of political violence in the United States is going to go away just simply because Joe Biden is president.
I mean, there are many people who are armed and dangerous. Do you think Biden will have the courage to tackle the gun lobby?
Oh, I think that will be probably a high priority for the Biden administration. Again, particularly with the Democrats controlling the Senate and the House. I don't think they'll be shying away from that issue. Primarily, I think Biden will focus on the economic policies in order to provide a kind of a floor for all Americans and to curry good favor potentially with those who didn't vote for him by improving their economic lot. And then go from there. I think that will be the priority, and of course, tackling the COVID-19 pandemic.
And briefly, if you will, I mean, how much damage can Trump still do? We know that he's put Cuba back on the terrorist list. I mean, what do you think Trump's priorities will be other than saving his career and reputation?
Priority will be avoiding the legal consequences of his actions of late and in the past, and as well as the number of prosecutions and investigations which are out there and which he no longer is immune to once he's no longer president. I think that's Trump's number one priority. Of course, there's always the risk of a military confrontation or some other irrational action in the final days of his presidency. And you know, one would be silly to discount that. But I think the president's primary priority is protecting himself, and pretty much has been since day one.
It'll be interesting to see what he does with Mexico. This is Biden. Many are joking that they're now keen to build the wall. Mark Rosenberg, thank you very much for talking to us.